Let's take a little detour from our historical narrative to just talk a little bit about terminology. We're speaking about the continuous history of one people, one ethnos, and that is the people who are known today as the Jews or the Jewish people. Note, of course, that this is not a racial category because there are Jews who come from all types of different races that make up the Jewish people, but it is something kind of tribal in nature because traditionally, Judaism is a religion, but it is passed on through one's mother. That is, it's matrilineal. In the 20th century, the Reform movement added a patrilineal option to it, but that we'll get to, God willing, when we talk about the 20th century. But for now, I've been rather sloppy about referring to these people as Jews even well before they would have used this term to describe themselves. And I think that's justifiable in the sense that we are talking really about one continuous, group of people. But let's just sort out the names for those of you who want to get this exactly right. So the oldest term that is used for Jews is the term Hebrew, and this comes from the fact that Abraham crossed over the Euphrates River on his way to Israel. The word Ivri, which is used to refer to a Hebrew person, comes from the word avar, which means to cross over or to transverse. And we're talking about a Semitic people who appear in the land of Israel, the ancient land of Israel, but their origins from Abraham are, of course, in Mesopotamia, where he comes, as described in the book of Genesis, from the city known as Ur. So the term Ivri is used to refer to a person, it's an ethnos, but it's also used as an adjective. The term Ivrit means the Hebrew language, for example, although it's an adjective it can be used to all kinds of things as well. So the term Hebrew is the oldest term, and this is what we see especially in the earliest books of the Bible. However, the term Ivri is often used in a retrospective fashion as well, and synonymous with Israelite and Jew, as we see in the book of Jonah in the first chapter, where he says to the other members of the boat, Ivri Anochi, I am a Hebrew, and I fear the God of heaven, right? So the term Ivri, although historically it is the oldest and it is used later on in time as well, it specifically refers to this people that came from the other side of the Euphrates River. Now, the term Israelites is a little more complicated because the name Israel, of course, corresponds to Jacob. Jacob, the third of the patriarchs, has his name changed in a dramatic scene in Genesis to Israel, which means one who struggles with God. Fascinating kind of thing. We'll talk about that later. At any rate, Jacob and Israel are the same person, and the Bible will use the terms children of Israel, house of Jacob, more or less synonymously, although Rashi will explain that based on the Talmud, the children of Israel refers to the men, the house of Jacob refers to the women, things like that. And in fact, through much of the early parts of the Bible, the people who we call now Jews are typically referred to as the children of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, also known as Israel. But it's also the term that's used to refer to the Jews once they settled in the land of Israel after the Exodus, after leaving Egypt. And in fact, we even have evidence from non-Jewish sources, such as the Merneptah stele shown here, that dates from the year 1209 before the Common Era, which has the first reference to the word Israel, referring to a people living in the land of Israel, probably towards the northern part of the land of Israel. So by the time we get to the late 13th century, Israel is definitely used as a term by Jews and non-Jews for this people. Hence the term Israelite in English, meaning one who pertains to Israel. The term also attains special significance because that's the name that applies to the northern kingdom. The Jews in the land of Israel suffer a civil war and a fracturing of their state in the 9th century after the rule of King Solomon, and the southern part is called Judah, as shown here, and the northern part is called Israel. They're all still one people. They recognize themselves as being part of 12 tribes, all descendants of the children of Jacob, Israel, but they call their political entity to the north Israel. And you can see this in the book of Kings, for example. There's a lot of discussion of what that kingdom of Israel is. So the term Israel, which is used prior to the division of the land into two separate kingdoms, it is especially used after the division. The term Jews becomes especially prominent after the 8th century when the northern kingdom is destroyed by the Assyrians. Here you can see in this map that the Assyrian kingdom expands and eventually conquers the northern part, the kingdom of Israel, and then ultimately destroys its sovereignty and will exile the Jews from there. And as you can see in this map, there is a significant portion of Jews, the so-called lost 10 tribes, who are sent into exile in Assyria in particular. However, what's not widely understood is that not all of the Jews were sent out of the land of Israel by the Assyrians. In fact, it's probably a number around 30,000, which would leave a much larger number still in the land. However, under the political pressure of the Assyrians, many of them fled to the south, to the region known as Judah, right? That's the southern kingdom. Judah, by the way, is Yehuda in Hebrew. J and Y often switch between Western European languages and Hebrew. So a lot of those people who were from the 10 tribes in the north made their way down to Yehuda, where there was considerable mixing of the peoples. So much so that long afterwards, you have a description of a person who was not of the tribe of Judah living in Persia, of course, the great Mordecai, who was referred to as Ish Yehudi, a Jewish man. So it's really in this time period, the 8th century and onward, when the name Judah is especially associated with Jews, no matter what tribe they may have come from. And in fact, tribal designations are gradually lost. By the time you get to a few centuries later, we have no idea which tribe any people come from, except for the tribe of Levi, which is in another section. So that's basically how we get these three terms: Hebrews, Israelites, and Jews, all one people with different names they might have used for themselves at different points in time, but they will often use earlier names to refer to themselves later on in time. Okay, I hope that clarified things. Thank you very much for watching.